Hello enthusiasts and welcome to this new video from the website www.moonwatch.fr. Today I present to you a vintage watch from the early 1980s with this Tudor Prince Day Date. The watch Tudor Prince Day Date is a vintage automatic watch with a fluted gold bezel. Chic and classy, this Tudor watch is reminiscent of the Day Date model from Rolex. It was in 1956 that Rolex began distributing its famous Rolex Day Date. It is the very first watch to display the day of the week written out in full on the dial. This watch is an improved version of the Rolex Datejust, and it is available only in precious metals, so primarily in full gold. In the 1960s, the brand Tudor, the little sister of the famous La Couronne manufacturer, added its own Day Date model to its range. To avoid competing with the Rolex Day Date, which were in gold, this Tudor watch was then available only in stainless steel and gold steel. Over the years, several variations of the Day Date were produced with different dials, different colors, different bezels, and different case sizes. But the most significant model is probably this one. Tudor Day Date reference 94-6-113 with its fluted gold bezel. These vintage Tudor watches were produced in the same factories as Rolex watches, but they were sold at a price of $1.50, more appealing and more attractive. They are therefore excellent alternatives to watches. Vintage Rolex. Let's now look at the technical specifications of this Tudor Prince Day Date. This model was manufactured in 1984. It is a watch that can be worn by both men and women. The case is made of steel, but the bezel is gold, just like the signed crown, with the Rolex crown, which is also gold. The bezel, therefore, is fixed, fluted. Very elegant, very pretty. The diameter of this model is 36 mm with a thickness of about 10 mm, 10.5 mm. So truly a very chic, very distinguished watch. The bracelet, well, there have been several models. The model I am presenting to you today is mounted on a Jubilee. Rolex, so it's the Jubilee 62510, if I'm not mistaken, with end links. The lug width measures 20 mm, and finally we find two complications, the day and the date. First of all, the case of the Tudor Day Date measures 36 mm in diameter and a little over 10 mm in thickness. These dimensions may seem small compared to current standards, but at the time this size was representative and the watch, which was meant to be discreet, was perfectly suited to the build of the men who ultimately wore them. The case is made of steel, stainless, and it is identical to that of the Rolex Day Date watches. Next, there is a fluted bezel in yellow gold which is attached to the case. This bezel is very beautiful. It's really what makes this watch, the elegance and aesthetics of this watch. The combination of the steel case and the gold bezel offers a less classy aesthetic than a watch that would be full gold, for example. The contrast in the hue of the materials is pleasant and adds a touch of modernity to a watch that is decidedly vintage. Continuing on, there is a screwed gold crown that allows you to set the time, date, and day. Don't be shocked to see the Rolex crown. On this crown, the Rolex logo, which is engraved. Indeed, Rolex and Tudor belonged to the same watchmaking group, and at the time they shared many parts. Movements, cases, bezels, bracelets, etc. Finally, we find a case back that ensures the watch's water resistance. It is a screwed case back on which you can read the original inscription, Oyster Case by Rolex, Geneva. Obviously, with a watch like this from the 80s, a vintage watch, moreover, which is not a diver's watch, I advise against even getting the watch wet. Even if it's a watch that is in superb condition, this watch is really in a magnificent cosmetic state. A few micro scratches from use, but nothing very bothersome. Obviously, we are not going to swim with this watch. The dial of this Tudor Day Date is a slightly iridescent gold color. It's not easy to show on camera, but the dial is really very, very, very beautiful. It easily catches the light and its reflections vary, from yellow to brown. Very dark. The range of shades is therefore incredible, and this dial remains readable regardless of the lighting conditions. And that is a major strength of the watch, because for example on some models, I don't have a specific model in mind, but for instance, I take my Rolex Zenith. It's not super readable. Here, this one is really readable, regardless of the lighting conditions. It's only in the dark where the watch is not readable at all, simply because there are no luminescent materials, or very few, and it's not enough to read in the dark. In any case, during the day, this watch is really very readable. It praises. With the light, with the reflections, it's very, very pleasant. Secondly, there are several black inscriptions placed on the dial. You'll find Tudor Prince Day Date at 12 o'clock, just below the logo, the famous little flag of Tudor. Then you can also read Rotor Self-Winding, or Cache, at 6 o'clock, and the famous Swiss Made at 6 o'clock as well. What makes this watch special, of course, are the two dates and day windows. On this model, the day window, which is at 12 o'clock, has the unique feature of being in French. It's a rather rare feature, quite difficult to find, which makes the watch even more incredible. Another unique feature is that the date and day discs are also gold-colored, and as a result they blend into the dial. It's very, very pretty. Often you find day-date watches with a champagne or gold dial, but the discs are white, and as a result it clashes a little with the dial. Here, everything is harmoniously positioned and chosen by Tudor, so it's really very, 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 very pretty. Nothing to say on that side. To finish, we find a plexiglass crystal that protects the dial of this Tudor Prince Day Date. This crystal features the famous Rolex Cyclops at 3 o'clock to make reading the date easier. This crystal scratches quite easily. I didn't want to have it changed during the service, so it's the original crystals I had, and you see it still remains in very, very good condition. This Tudor Prince Day Date watch houses an automatic caliber that offers two complications, the date complication and the day complication. Without certainty, there is a strong likelihood that this automatic watch Tudor houses a movement. Tudor Rolex, which is inspired by the ETA 2834, but once again this is without certainty. I don't have the tools that allow me to open the case back. As a result, I couldn't look inside, and I haven't found much information regarding this reference. 94630. In any case, it's a movement that is precise. It doesn't have a very large drift. It must be a few seconds per day, nothing too serious for a watch from the early 1980s. Regarding the wearing comfort of the bracelet, this Tudor Bedette vintage watch is fitted with a Jubilee bracelet in steel from Rolex. This bracelet reference 625 10-inch is mounted with the help of Henlink 555, which fit perfectly to the case of this Tudor. The Rolex Jubilee bracelet is truly a marvel because it is flexible, providing a wearing comfort that is rarely found on other types of links. The different brushings of the links play with the light without being flashy, and that is also very, very beautiful, very elegant. I really like it. The bracelet is very flexible. It has gained a little stretch over time, but once again, nothing dramatic. The watch wears quite well. I find it even enhances the vintage aspect of the watch. Since it is still a watch from the early 1980s, The simple deployant clasp, on which you will find the Rolex crown, ensures the perfect fit of the watch on the wrist. The 20mm lug width, allows for easy strap changes, knowing that on this watch you can also put a nice leather strap, which will suit it perfectly. This Tudor Prince Day Date watch was only produced in the 1980s. Therefore, the only way to get one now is to look at the second-hand market. You can find them for less than the Rolex Day Date from the same years, but the value of these Tudor Day Date models continues to rise. Why? Because the watches are becoming increasingly rare. They are becoming harder to find, and the demand does not decrease, so the value goes up. Today, to buy a Tudor Prince Day Date, you need to budget between €2,900 and €3,600. This depends, of course, on the watch's reference, the bracelet, and the set provided, which can affect the price. In any case, this Tudor Day Date watch is an alternative, interesting and less expensive than buying a vintage Rolex Day Date. This Tudor doesn't have much to envy from its big sister, as it shares many components. It is therefore at the same level of quality, in terms of finished construction, as the Rolex Day Date. However, be careful, vigilance is necessary because many watches are not original and they have been modified, or the movements have been changed, altered, tinkered with, I don't know what. As a result, buying a vintage watch is always a risky operation. Take your time, go see the watch, ask to have the case opened, check the serial numbers as well. Also, don't hesitate to ask for the service and maintenance card, which will assure you that the watch is original and hasn't been tampered with. This watch, the Tudor Prince Day Date, will suit someone looking for a vintage, dressy watch. The fluted gold bezel echoes the color of the dial and constantly plays with the light. The day window in French is rare on this President model. The date and day discs blend perfectly with the dial, as they are also gold-colored, which is also quite rare. The Rolex Jubilee bracelet is also appreciated, as it suits this Tudor Day Date perfectly. And since it's an ultra-comfortable bracelet, very elegant as well, it adjusts easily and fits the wrist perfectly. Available in 36mm, this case size will suit both the male and female wrist. It might seem like a small diameter to us, since the current trend is more towards large watches of 42mm and above, but precisely that's what makes the watch elegant. Moreover, it's quite rare to have watches over 40mm in diameter that are elegant. So, for someone looking for a small vintage watch very characteristic of those years, very nice, with a timeless design, always in vogue. This small watch, Tudor Day Date, will be perfect. These vintage Tudor watches are timeless, quite exclusive, as there aren't that many left. And above all, you rarely come across them on the wrists of other enthusiasts. And as a result, they catch the eye and simply allow for conversations over a drink. So to me, it seems even more desirable, for example, than the Rolexes from those years, which were produced in much larger quantities. So, that's the end of my review on this Tudor Day Date Prince. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave a comment about what you think of the watch. Do you think the fact that the dial is gold makes it a bit too classic, a bit too formal? Or on the contrary, do you think it gives it a certain elegance not found in other models? In any case, feel free to let me know in the comments. Finally, before you go, remember to click the thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. This helps us get better referenced by YouTube and allows us to offer you even more content. Also, we are available on moonwatch.fr. You will find our latest reviews there, as well as on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Just type moonwatch.fr all together and you'll find us. With that, I wish you a good end of the day, enthusiasts, and see you soon.